Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 14th PAVE Europe virtual panel. My name is Guido Di Pasquale. I'm Managing Director at PAVE Europe, Partners for Automated Vehicle Education. Well, today we talk about something that is very exciting. At least for me personally, it's very exciting, and it's the ambitions of the city of Hamburg and the future of its mobility systems thanks to the deployment of autonomous vehicles. As you might know, the plan is that by 2030, Hamburg aims to introduce 10,000, so you heard well, 10,000 autonomous shuttles as part of an on-demand transport service that would complement the classic or the traditional public transport system, both buses, lines, rail transport system. And allow me to say that it's a huge number of autonomous vehicles, at least for Europe. Of course, this won't happen in one day. There is a plan to set for a set of projects to get there, like the A-like project, and we will talk about that later, funded by the German Federal Ministry. And the project and this ambition includes experienced operators like Hamburger Hochbahn, the public transport operator in Hamburg, and MOIA, a company of the Volkswagen Group. And I have the real pleasure today to have with me two key players of these ambitious plans of the city of Hamburg. Tobias Brzoskowski, who is director at New Mobility Solutions in Hamburg. Hello, Tobias. And
hi, Guido. Thanks.
And we have Jonas Wigger, Public Affairs Manager at MOIA. So I'm very delighted to have you both with me today to this conversation. Let me say that we have got an important response from the registration. So we have many people registered for this webinar that shows the high interest to learn about your plans and what is your vision in Hamburg and maybe how this can be transferred or replicated to other cities and areas in Europe. But let me start. So welcome again. Let me start with you, Tobias, if you can introduce yourself and spend a few words about New Mobility Solutions, Hamburg.
Sure, Guido. Thanks for the invitation, first of all. My name is Tobias Brzoskowski, as you already said. I am director at New Mobility Solutions Hamburg. We are a daughter company of the Hamburger Hochbahn, which is the main public transport operator here in Hamburg. What we do is we do consultancy, strategy work, project work, also some grant funding management and communication. And all of that is mainly focused on the topics of digital mobility here in the city of Hamburg. So our main client is the Ministry of Transport here in Hamburg. So although we are a private company, a German GmbH, we mainly work in the public realm. We mainly work with public contractors. Or we are a contractor to the public. And yeah, the topic we are talking about today is very relevant for us. It is a key topic in the strategy for digital mobility that we recently wrote for the Ministry of Transport here in Hamburg. And yeah, looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Tobias. And Jonas, please could you introduce yourself and MOIA as well?
Sure. My name is Jonas Wigger. I work as a public affairs manager at MOIA, as Guido already said. So I'm responsible with members of my team and our head of communications for the political communication within Germany, but also on the European level and also on a local level in Hamburg. And MOIA is a company within the Volkswagen Group, which is a mobility solution for cities. I think we're going to delve deeper into our business model and what we do a bit later, but the Volkswagen Group just identified certain problems in cities like congestion, emissions, and and all these kinds of problems you're all aware of. And MOIA is our solution is an important part to solving these issues. And that's why we were founded in 2017. We are already operating in Hamburg a fleet of 565 vehicles, and yeah. I just want to leave it at that, but currently we're on the street with manual drivers, but in future we want to have a autonomous service on the road. So that's why we're here today.
Thank you, Jonas. In fact, you sort of introduced my question to Tobias. I would like to start with you to introduce the vision of the city. So what's the vision of Hamburg and the overall holistic strategy that you have in integrating the autonomous vehicles in the urban landscape. So this, I think, is very important because it's the why. Why are you doing that in Hamburg? It's your vision in that.
Yeah, I think in order to answer that, we must first think a bit broader about our vision for future mobility. So what we envision, and we also plan strategically on how mobility should change, is mainly derived from the need to make mobility more efficient, more safe, and most importantly, really more sustainable in our city. So we want to be CO2 neutral by 2045. We also have a lot of local emissions here that we want to reduce. And overall, we really want to make our city more livable, more enjoyable. So what we think is necessary to do that really is to get changes on in the modal shift. So the ways that people move in our city, we have a vision and we are actually on a good path. So we do a lot of monitoring about that to have 80-20 modal split. So what does that mean? We envision that people will move in the year 2030, maybe it will be 2032. Let's see about that. 80% of their ways with what we call the Umweltverbund in German, which would be climate-friendly modes, meaning active mobility, walking, cycling, shared mobility, classic public transport, of course, but also ride sharing, also car sharing, all of these new modes, new players that come into the field. And public transport is, of course, a crucial backbone for that. Public transport is crucial for shared mobility, but we must think more holistically about it. Public transport is really interesting and most useful when we combine it with other modes and other shared mobility options. So we as a city are well aware that we must seek new forms of partnerships. That is why one of the reasons why we also work very closely with MOIA. So I'm happy to be with Jonas in this panel here. And the idea really is to create alternatives to private car usage, because that's the other 20% of the modal split I just talked about. 20%, that's the vision, should be motorized individual vehicle, only 20%. Right now, we are roughly around 30%. It's pretty good already. We're on a good way reducing that, but there's a way to go still. So why is autonomous mobility so interesting in this approach? Well, shortly, because it really has the potential to drive down cost of shared mobility and at the same time enhance the availability of services. And this creates new options. It brings shared mobility to areas that are currently underserved because classic fixed line operations of public transport, the mass transit in certain areas, you are well aware, doesn't make sense. It's not economically viable or feasible. So that's where we cannot bring public transport at the moment. Bringing that with on-demand autonomous mobility, that's at least our idea, that's the vision, will be possible. And it is exactly these areas in the city of Hamburg that are most important if we really think about mobility transition, because that is really where people have cars. That is where they own 2 cars in a family, sometimes even 3 cars in a family. So that will give us the alternatives and possibilities to first really get rid of the second car and maybe in some areas then later of the first car. Yeah.
Thank you, Tobias. And I think what is impressing and what can impress our audience as well is the number. So 10,000 autonomous vehicles, as I said, is quite big for the experience. What's the rationale behind this figure? So why this? Of course, the more you have, the better for many reasons, but there must be something behind this number.
Yeah. So first of all, let me say 10,000 is not a fixed number. It doesn't really matter if it's 10,000 or 9,000 or 8,000. It is an idea to give everyone, or it is the idea to give everyone dimensions, what we are speaking about. So the rationale behind communicating such a figure is really signaling. In my opinion, the PTAs, so the public transport agencies and the public transport operators, really have a problem at the moment. They have a common challenge when we speak about autonomous vehicles, because, I mean, what do we see? We see the most advanced pilots and first larger deployments of AVs happen with ride-hailing concepts. And this is no surprise, because it is a business model in itself. It's a no-brainer. It's really about letting go of human drivers and using robotaxis instead, which is okay because this is a business model. It makes sense. It's a straightforward business perspective. It's much more difficult to communicate what the shared AV in public transport case is about, just because public transport is heavily subsidized business. So there's a lot of debate in the public transport community about the potential benefits, the revolutionary impact that AVs might have on public transport in the future, in some future. But in contrast to some, of course, I mean, in contrast to robotaxi fleets, the benefits to mobility systems in the approach with public transport are higher, and they are very convincing. But in my opinion, and I think that's really what this number is about, leading cities must see this potential, and they must communicate the potential that they see to make business, and they must send out credible signals that they really want to either buy such large amounts of vehicles to the industry, or to create, let's say, business models, to create, let's say, the boundaries that private operators can come to the city and have feasible business models in shared AV operations. So why 10,000, to be very specific? The figures are based on a first simulation that actually MOIA did together with the Karlsruhe Institute of Technology on what impact the usage of shared ride pooling vehicles can have. And we saw that in this dimension, let's say in this dimension, there will be a significant change in the modal splits. So that's really why we put it in a memorandum of understanding with the Federal Ministry of Transport of Germany. And that's when the number of 10,000 got out. And I think it's good to have this number. It shows ambition. Personally, I would wish for more cities to be that ambitious. But to be frank, it is not yet a plan, it is a vision.
Yeah, very clear. And before we move to Jonas, your plan starts with smaller steps, and this is the I-Like project, right? It's starting a small number of autonomous vehicles. Could you just spend a few words about the I-Like project, and we go to Jonas?
Sure. Just to state that, because it's fair to say that, and we have to treat our projects the same. We have currently 2 comparable projects running in the city of Hamburg when it comes to AV deployment. One of them is alike. So we expect to see deployment of a fleet of or larger fleet of AVs in the next years from the alike project. In this project, which you already stated, it is funded by the Federal Ministry of Transport of Germany. We speak about 20 vehicles. And there's another ongoing project called Ahoy, also funded by the Federal Ministry of Transport, which plans to deploy a further 20 vehicles. The projects are not the same. There are differences in them. Maybe we can discuss that later. But in alike, the goal is to set up operations or to test on-demand operations by 2025. That's the starting point. And what I personally like about the Alike project is the setup of the consortium, because we have the public side involved with the city of Hamburg. We have the Hamburger Hochbahn involved as a PTO. We have the industry involved, the leading industry with Volkswagen, with MOIA, with Holon, and with Mobileye. And we also have science partners involved that are very relevant here, which is the Karlsruhe Institute of Technology. So I think it's a good mixture, yeah.
Yeah, indeed. You have all the elements to succeed here. And Jonas, from your point of view, from the point of view of MOIA, I know that you take also a dual role here as a fleet operator and tech provider. Could you explain a bit better what is your role in the overall plans of the city of Hamburg, and in particular in the Alike project?
Sure. Let me start with supporting Tobias with his remarks on this vision for 10,000 vehicles, or up to 10,000 vehicles in Hamburg, because we think, like, as an industry player, we think it's very, very important that cities have these kinds of visions to create a market for autonomous vehicles in the European Union, but also above that, because you need to create demands. The industry needs to see viable plans for scaling, and I think it's very, very important for the industry to see such visions. So fully agree to that. Within the Alike project, you already mentioned, we take on the dual role. We're a fleet operator for our own vehicles and a tech provider to integrate autonomous vehicles from MOIA, but also from the Hamburger Hochbahn as the public transport operator. And that's a pretty unique setup, and the vehicles in the end will be bookable through the MOIA app and the HVV Switch app, which is a mobility as a service app within the city of Hamburg. So, and I think within the Alike project, of course, we're an important part, and we're an important part of the city's vision for 10,000 or up to 10,000 vehicles until 2030, because I think MOIA will supply a large number of these vehicles in the upcoming years. We are part of the Volkswagen Group, so I believe we have the ability to scale our operations, and we have a very experienced manufacturer who just works in large numbers, right? So I think that's what we do. And Tobias already mentioned this unique setup where we bring together different manufacturers from vehicles, but also research institutions. And I think this collaboration is really unique, and that's a great thing, I think. And also, of course, we're very grateful for the substantial funding from the Ministry of Transport in Germany. And I think something else that will be very interesting in the project will be our research on the public acceptance of AVs. And we will learn a lot about that. And we work, as I said, with research institutions in that regard. And I think also other cities can benefit from these experiences in future.
Yeah, on that point, Jonas, because it's very important also what we are doing here today to transfer this knowledge and this what you are doing, what Hamburg is doing to other contexts and other cities in Europe. What is attractive about Hamburg for MOIA? Or what is unique, as you said, from the regulatory point of view to business modeling point of view, or citizens' point of view?
Mm-hmm. I think from our perspective, it's firstly Hamburg's commitment to innovation and sustainability at the same time. It's a very open city. Or if we talk to authorities, we always have an open ear, and they're always open to discover new things, discover new solutions, and also the setup with companies like the New Mobility Solutions GmbH. It's great to work with them, and everyone, all the different partners benefit from this kind of collaboration. Also, of course, Hamburg size and density provides a good testing ground for our AVs to learn in complex traffic situations, but also it's easier to develop a sustainable business model in Hamburg with this kind of demand that we expect there. And I think it's also very interesting or important for other cities to see that these business models actually work. Of course, as I already said, a population that is very tech savvy and open, that's very, very important. Also, I'm responsible within our team for the public dialogue on autonomous driving in Hamburg. And everywhere I go in the city, I very rarely I hear skepticism, like seriously, very rarely. And they're all very excited and they all say, oh, we hate the congestion in the city and everything. We like solutions that are safe and flexible and convenient. And and when it comes to business objectives, of course, it's great that a vision or a city's vision aligns with our vision, with closing the gap between private vehicles and public transport with a convenient and flexible solution. So I think that's what makes Hamburg unique in that sense. Yeah, or not unique, but I want to say it's the perfect testing bed for our operations to start. Yeah.
Yeah, and which is a good news for PAVE Europe as well, that you don't see this skepticism from people. I have a question from the audience for you, Jonas. I don't know if you want to answer that, and it is about the role of the humans. So once you will deploy the autonomous vehicles, will the human drivers remain or assuming different roles in this? In the system, for example, helping carrying luggages, these are the example, or supporting people with reduced mobility?
Sure. Well, first of all, we have to say that from 2026 on, we want to start like a bookable service for autonomous vehicles in Hamburg, and it won't be like that the whole service will be autonomous from 2026 on. So we'll still have mixed fleets. We will still have employ human drivers. We're currently employing over 900 drivers in Hamburg, and with 1,400 people, we're under the 80 biggest employers in Hamburg. So it is already a growing company. And of course, in future, we will still need people. So we will need them for our fully accessible vehicles. So for our wheelchair accessible vehicles to support persons with disabilities. We will need them for the technical supervision of the vehicles. As you know, it's a regulatory. It's part of the regulation that you have to have a technical supervisions, and we can qualify our drivers in future to be part of the technical supervision. But also for customer service and everything, we will need people. So people don't need to worry at MOIA about losing their jobs. Yeah.
Thank you, Jonas. Now, Tobias, any big project, any ambitious project has challenges, of course. And I guess that you envisage some challenges in deploying 10,000 autonomous vehicles in the next years. And what are also the challenges that you already faced until now, and what you foresee in the future?
Yeah, so there are several, and we will encounter more, I'm sure, in the next years. But I want to set aside, I don't want to deal with the technical challenges. They are obvious. I think there is still a lot to do about the digital driver. There's still a lot to do about vehicle architecture and all of that. But that's not our job, to be very clear. That's the industry job. And I think they will provide solutions. And I'm optimistic that we will have good vehicles, trustworthy vehicles, safe vehicles. So I wouldn't focus on that. What I would focus on, or what I want to focus on, is more the challenges for the city as administrator, and also maybe a little bit on the public transport operator side. So first of all, and I always emphasize that because I feel we do not talk sufficiently about it, this technology will open up new business models, and it will make business models, let's say, possible that are at the moment not cost efficient. So the public sector must think really thoroughly about how we can integrate these new players, these new business models, and their innovation in our mobility system. Because if we do that, we will create an ecosystem that actually serves our mobility goals as a city. So I think we need to think about new forms of partnerships. We really need to think that through. We will also have to speak, of course, about the public perception of AVs. there will be resistance. Just look at San Francisco, look at what's happening there. I wouldn't be too pessimistic about it, so I agree with Jonas, but it is, of course, a communication challenge, and also the shift in the labor market away from driving the vehicle must be communicated very wisely. I also see challenges for classic PTOs, for classic public transport operators to integrate these new vehicle types and new technologies in their existing operations, especially if they have mixed operations. So some will be human-driven, some already will be automated to some point, some will be maybe fully autonomous, we will see. So I think this will be challenging for these players, but I think it will not be easy for new players to just go to a city and set up operations either. I think there is a lot, just think about the depot question. I mean, you need to go to a city, you want to scale your fleet, you need depots. The best would be to have them in a very centered location of a city, scarce space, you need energy supply. Yeah, a lot of upfront capital costs. So I think, let's put it that way, I think scaling will not be easy for new players as well. So again, partnerships might make sense here. And of course, I think in Europe, we also have to demonstrate really the feasibility of our regulatory approach towards AVs. In Germany, we now have regulation in place that allows driverless AV services, but up to now, as far as I know, it's mostly theory, just because we have not seen these permits issued. At least we have not seen the permits issued that we would need for fully driverless operations. So although technology will get there, there is still some regulatory uncertainty, and the best way to deal with that is to try them out. So that's why I say we must pilot and we must do the first deployments as soon as possible. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Tobias. There are questions from the audience regarding teleoperation. If you expect teleoperation, or if it's planned to have teleoperation, and in which situations or use cases?
Yeah, so we as a city, we are open to that. We try it out. We have a project running with the company PAVE in Hamburg, in the city district of Hamburg, where they run teleoperated vehicles. We see potential for these technologies in certain areas of AV deployment. For example, if a vehicle is stuck, if a vehicle needs assistance, it might make sense to have teleoperators. But in the end, again, I must say, from a city perspective, I do not really want to make that decision. I've also heard from the industry other voices. Some say it poses a huge security risk. In the end, it must work. It must be certifiable. And maybe that's more a question towards Jonas and the Volkswagen MOIA group, where their approach towards AV operations goes, and if teleoperation is foreseen there.
Yeah, Jonas, do you have any reaction?
No, there are currently no plans that I'm aware of within the group for teleoperations.
Thank you. And Jonas, Tobias mentioned business models. I'm interested to learn more about MOIA's business model for, in offering the autonomous shared mobility services. What are the values that it has to deliver to users and stakeholders? This is also part, if you want, of the MOIA's roadmap and deployment of autonomous vehicles in other cities as well.
Sure. Let me talk about our business model first, and then we'll see where it takes us, and feel free to ask a question in between. But our business model revolves around the provision of shared mobility services, of course. The concept of ride pooling means people with a similar destination are pulled together through an intelligent algorithm using an app interface. So that's the easiest explanation I can give for that. And our approach is that we work very closely with cities and operators. And as you can see, in Hamburg, we are part already with our manual service, part of the public transport system. For us, that means, for example, we can use bus lanes, and we can use certain bus stops. But also for users, it means they get a discount if they have a subscription to public transport. They get €1 discount per ride in our service. So and that's why, and of course, this is also a value added to society, right? Because we want to contribute to a city's goal to reduce congestion, all these kind of traffic-induced problems. And for our users, of course, the value added is a convenient and flexible mobility option that complements public transport. We already talked about that, but also in AV operations, we want to create a very a safe product, of course, that people love to use. And of course, we have different technologies in place for that to ensure this kind of the safety, for example, and how people are monitored within the vehicle and how we can interact with the technical supervision. And of course, there won't be a driver, so people will have to get used to that. But we try to ensure safety and that people feel well taken care of. And for cities, and Tobias already touched upon that, so I don't want to repeat everything, but he already said that MOIA, or didn't mention MOIA, but he said we need viable business models for public transport. And I think Henrik Falk, the former CEO of the public transport operator Hochbahn, he always put it nicely, said we need to let go of the distinction between private and public mobility. He just said we just need to think in terms of mobility systems, and we need to work together to create this kind of new mobility system. And I think that's a very good goal for everyone to work together and leave this kind of old thinking. And I think that's the value we can add, and something else we want to add to the AV debate. Whether they're safe and a viable option for people to use. I think we at MOIA, we take a very, I don't know if it's a different approach, but our approach to public dialogue is we want to do certain events in Hamburg where we invite people to come over to look at the vehicles, to talk to our engineers, to understand the product. We want to be as transparent and open as possible. So I think, and I think that's also, we have some specifics about Germany that you need to take take into consideration, but I think that's very important to us.
Thank you, Jonas. And I think this is connected to the how you deploy and how you use the autonomous vehicles. So what are the use cases or the main use cases that will be deployed in Hamburg? Tobias, you mentioned that the ambition is to complement traditional public transport, to intervene where public transport is not the best solution for the users because it's in the rural areas, or because it's in hours of the day there where these services are not viable. But at the end, what is important is to provide a service to the users that they can use as alternative to the private cars. Or this is what I understand is the ambition of Hamburg. So what are the use cases that you are exploring in particular, if there are particular use cases that will be addressed in Hamburg?
Yeah.
Sorry, that's to Tobias.
Yeah, so we mainly see two use cases of relevance at the moment. The first one is, of course, the first last mile on demand feeder service to mass transit. So again, in areas with low housing densities, at the train stop, AVs can provide a level or can provide accessibility and can just, solve the first last mile problem that we always have in these areas. And again, there it just doesn't make sense to have larger vehicles, to have fixed line operations. So we see a lot of potential there. And that would be, let's say, deeply integrated public transport use cases. So I personally, I don't know yet how exactly in the future, when scaling that, it will look like, if it will be priced as part of the public transport, if there will be a small surcharge. We will have to see. With respect to that use case, we already have several areas where we have these operations running at the moment, manually driven. So there is a product in Hamburg on the market for that. And it works with a small, it is deeply integrated. So the price is nearly the same as just using public transport. There's just a small surcharge, let's say a comfort surcharge that you have to pay. And that is, of course, from a city perspective and from a systemic perspective, a very beneficial use case. But also the MOIA use case, which is more of a ride pooling, point-to-point connection. So where it really brings you from A to B. You just do ride pooling, so you do some detours and collect other persons, is also very interesting. I think it is not the role of the city really to judge here what makes more sense, because it really depends on the citizens' needs. In some cases, it just makes sense to have this point-to-point connection, and otherwise people might use their private car, or they would have to use a taxi they cannot afford. MOIA is cheaper. It fills a gap between public transport and the taxi. So I would say there are a lot of user groups, elderly people, young people, people that move during the night, etc. A lot of user groups that can enjoy, and they will select the point-to-point connection. But for daily transit, the on-demand feeder service also makes a lot of sense. So we're open to both concepts. And I think in Hamburg, we are fortunate to have already a lot of experience with both concepts. MOIA is working here. The other concept is called HVV Hop, also works here. And yeah, I think it makes sense to introduce these services already now, although I think they will be more, let's say, attractive even if we have AVs in place. Just because mobility behavior is so deeply anchored, it will take time to shift and to change these habits, these mobility habits. So it makes a lot of sense to already run these operations right now.
Thank you, Tobias. Jonas, would you like to add anything on this point?
I think he covered all the most important points, but what is something I want to stress is always that also in city centers, there is a need for solutions that close the gap between the private car and public transport, because people still use their cars in Hamburg, even if they live in city centers. So I think as Tobias said, we need it for all the different use cases, rural areas, suburban areas, but also in the city.
Thank you. And Jonas, question for you on the users, or on the consumer preferences, because users or they have different preferences and different needs, and is MOIA planning to adapt to this evolving consumer preferences and technological advancement, regulatory changes to maintain a competitive edge in the market? So how are you addressing the consumer point of view?
Of course, it's something we already do, right? Like we always have these continuous feedback loops where people can tell us about what they wish for to improve within our service, but also we try to personalize our service to the needs of our customers, and that will change also with autonomous vehicles, and we're very well aware of that. That's why it's very, very, very important to have this kind of community engagement and to talk to our customers, or to stay very close to them. But also when it comes to technological advancements, of course, we always want to improve the app interface, the user experience. It's something we've done in the past, but we will also do with autonomous vehicles, and also, of course, when it comes to fleet management, everything that works like behind the app and the people don't really see. I think there's also always room for improvement. And technologically, something interesting is also the Volkswagen Group in the long run wants to develop a so-called special purpose vehicle that can have more passengers than our ID Bus AD, with more than, well, ID Bus AD will have 4 passenger seats, but in future, of course, we also need larger vehicles if we think of scaling in very like big metropolitan areas like London or something like that. So these cities have a need for larger larger vehicles as well. And when it comes to regulatory changes, of course, we want to adapt and we want to work proactively with institutions or with regulators on a national and European level. In Germany, we have a very good relationship with the German ministry to work, for example, on shaping behavioral law for autonomous vehicles. It's something that doesn't exist right now, so that's something we're working on. But also on the European level, we're very interested in helping to abolish this kind of limitation to 1,500 vehicles to small series for AV type approval. So that's something we're working on very closely, and I think it's mobility is just a very highly regulated sector. So it's very, very important to work closely with the authorities in that sense.
Thank you, Jonas. Some final remarks, Tobias. In particular, there is a question from the audience that I find quite interesting, because if you wish, Hamburg now is a sort of reference with this ambitious project. And what we have seen so far, there have been several small, medium scale AV trials and pilots, also some services, as we well know. What would you recommend or suggest to other cities that would like to scale up or at least prepare to large-scale deployment of autonomous vehicles in their cities? So mainly the recommendation to the local government or the local operators.
Yeah, first of all, I would recommend to getting into contact, not because we are a know-it-all. We don't have all the expertise yet, but I think Hamburg cannot do it on their own. We really need to have changes on the national and also on the European level when it comes to some regulatory things, when it comes to financing. So we should open this debate together and first of all, really signal that there is a need and that it makes sense to deploy larger vehicle fleets of AVs. Second, I think it makes sense to look for partnerships, with companies that align with your vision on mobility. So we spoke with a lot of companies, in fact, that were interested to deploy vehicles in Hamburg. We regularly do. And some of the business cases make sense for you and what you are looking for your city, some don't. So I would select very wisely. Yeah, that would be the main points I have. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Tobias, Jonas. It was a pleasure to have you in this PAVE Europe virtual panel today for this interesting conversation. Unfortunately, our time is up, but I think this is the first of a series of interaction that we will have in the coming months and years because we are all very interested in what is happening in Hamburg. The video will be available on our YouTube channel and PAVEcast. So for those who could not attend, they will have the possibility to listen to you and what you said in this panel. So thank you very much. Thank you all for joining us today and looking forward to see you next time.